Thank you for joining us. And before we get started with today's video, if you guys like what you're seeing and hearing from the Locked On Senators podcast, go ahead and hit like, smash the subscribe button so you can be the first to know about Sens content. Now, we're going to be doing a ton of these prospect profiles, so if you agree this is someone the Sens should look at or steer clear, leave your comment below so we can hear from you. Now, we got 64 of these, so let's get into it.
All right, Pillsy, coming in at number 7. Number 7, where the Senators are currently slated to select in the 2022 NHL Draft. We are going to the exact opposite type of player of Cutter Gauthier. This guy is finesse. He's skill. He plays in my backyard. A good Winnipeg boy. He's from Alberta, but, he applies his trade here. It's Matthew Savoie. This guy is a human highlight reel, I think would be a great way to describe his attributes.
Yeah, I would agree. There's so many tools and skills offensively that he has at his disposal. And at the WHL level, he shows that quite often. And he was one of the top point producers in the entire league. And you got to see a bunch of his play. And anytime you can get 90 points in a season, he had 65 games, 35 goals, 55 points, good for 90 points total. You're doing something right.
Yeah, that's actually the most points by a draft-eligible player this year. And yeah, you can say, I don't think Slavkovsky ever had a chance because he's playing against men in Liga. Like, what would he have done in the WHL? But it's still a fact. He produced more points this year than any other draft-eligible player. And you know what? Is Jordan Dumais could be proving me wrong right now because I know the overager out there in Halifax had. But yeah, sorry, I lied. But does the Q count for that? We know the Q is just all
Easy.
offense all the time. No. Well, 109 points in 68 games. He's going to be a 5th-round pick. Like, that's what I'm saying, Pills.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. All I'll say then about Matthew Savoie is that he's brilliant. 35 goals. He can score. And a lot of people were chirping him or underselling him. And those who have him a little bit lower will say this about him. A lot of production on the power play. However, why is that bad? Like, I get you want players that can produce at even strength as well, but at the same time, man, like
I'm not going to knock a guy for cashing in.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's just dynamic. His skating is his number one attribute. I could talk about that and watch him skate all day. Like, he's one of those guys who does like the 10 and 2s where he'll open his edges out a little bit and doesn't lose any speed when he does it. If anything, he gains speed. And he's gained a lot of traction. Like Bob McKenzie and Scott Wheeler have him at 4th on their rankings. Tony Ferrari has him at 6. Elite Prospects has him at 9. Chris Peters at 10. And Craig Button all the way down at 12. Now, if I'm Craig Button, the reasoning I would say likely is because how many 5'9" centermen are there in the National Hockey League? He obviously played that position quite a bit in Winnipeg. I won't say all the time because there were times this year where he and Connor Geekie were on the same line, and Geekie, the big natural center, played that position, and Savoie would move over and play right wing. He's 179 pounds. He was also the first overall pick in the 2019 WHL Draft. Pilsy, Connor Geekie went 2nd. That's a way to build your franchise. Get the top 2 picks in the draft.
Yeah, what a way to welcome a new franchise to Winnipeg moving from Kootenay. That is definitely a good sign there. And the thing with Savoie is, sure, he's probably going to be a winger in the NHL, but that's fine. Like, that's like, it just adds a little thing in his back pocket. Like, yeah, I'll probably play wing, but I know how to play the center position if I need to in a pinch or if there's situations where it makes sense. And his ability, what I like a lot about him is the deception that he's able to do. Like, when I was watching his highlights, he does such a good job of drawing opponents in, luring them in, like closer. And then when his opponent is like, okay, I'm going to block off this lane. I'm right in front of him. This is the lane I'm going to choose to block off. Savoie says, okay, I'm going to lead him to that lane. And now I've just opened up all this space over here. Or the opposite. I'm going to lean him to the outside, make him think I'm going there, and then I'll pass it to the inside. Like, he's able to get defenders to do his bidding. Like, he gets them to do what he wants them to do. And then he creates space for himself and for his teammates in that direction. And I love his one-timer. He does that one-timer, Ross, where he drops down to one knee as he's shooting. And he's able to get a lot of power and a good release off
He doesn't have that far to go.
Yeah, true. Yeah, to get down there, it's not that far for him. But like his shot, his skating, his passing, he's able to get into those good shooting spots. So teammates are going to find him in spots where he can score high danger scoring opportunities. And there's just so much that he can do with his combination of offensive skills that I don't think it's that crazy for guys like Scott Wheeler to have him fourth overall, because if he can maintain all those skills and maybe get a little bit of size and figure out how to play properly on the wing at the pro level, there's a lot to like here. And EP, their shades of player was Matt Duchene.
Whoa.
I like that a lot. Like, sure, Matt Duchene had probably the greatest time in Ottawa that meant the least meaningless point per game pace essentially, but he was still electric when he was here, and the things he was able to pull off are incredible. And I can see Matthew Savoie being able to do similar things.
EP also gave him the 5th best vision. And Pilsy, you missed the other shades of a name that Sens fans have been drooling over for months. Kevin Fiala is
Yes.
their other shades of. So you look at the type of player that Kevin Fiala is, although both Duchene and Fiala are left shots, and Matthew Savoie is a right shot. He's also a New Year's Day baby, born January 1st, 2004. So he's on the older end of the players in this draft. An Eastern Conference scout this May said he can fly and he's got great hands. I think average's hockey sense might hold him back from becoming a can't-miss top-line player, but he's got as much talent as any prospect I've seen this season. So that to say, there are some question marks when it comes to his game. He's not overly physical, but there is also good news. He took a ridiculously big hit in game 2 of the Eastern Conference final in the WHL, like bone shattering. I had boots on the ground for that game. So did Pierre Dorion. And what he saw there was a player. He got up, he went to the bench, didn't lay there, but he avoided surgery. So that's great news. No shoulder surgery, but he did miss the rest of that series. Ultimately, Edmonton went on to move on. Now they're in the Memorial Cup, which we'll touch on at the end of the show, because Philip Daoud, we still have a Sens prospect to keep tabs on. But Pilsy, I love this player. I think he's going to do well at the NHL level. I just don't see him as a Senators type pick.
Yeah, because you start looking at the checklist we talked about with Cutter Gauthier, right?
It's so interesting, and I want you to finish that thought, but it's hard because we obviously have that thought in our head, but this is the same team, and maybe it's more of the drafting thing. The scouts want the checklist we go over. This is still the team that traded for Vitaly Abramov and traded for Eric Brandstrom. Like, they do have some smaller, more dynamic players in their arsenal when they are making player acquisitions.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But I think when you're looking at a top 10 Senators selection, the scouts probably get a little bit more leverage there, and they're going with their principles and the things they like, right? And here's the thing with Savoie is I just think there's so much upside here. He wouldn't be my top choice at number 7 overall, but if the Sens decided those are areas of need, like they've got some power forward type players, they've got some physical guys that can shoot and play with pace and have dads in the NHL, so they've filled that criteria. So if they say, hey, we went with the Tyler Boucher type route last draft, let's go a completely different opposite way here, they could sell me on that for sure. Like, I would have no issue if Savoie was the player they selected, because that just brings a whole different dynamic to this franchise's pipeline. And if he's not ready right away and he needs a little more time, that's okay. And I could see him playing a role with the Ottawa Senators as that second line forward with Stützle and Patterson if need be.
Yeah, it'll take a little while for him to get there, though. And if you want to see something funny, look at his minor hockey league career.
Yeah, oh my God.
97 points in 30 games. Then he doubles that down with 71 in 31, 52 in 22. Then it took him a while to adjust, fair to say, to the WHL. He was playing as a 15-year-old, 22 games, 7 assists. That to say, then there was the COVID season where he just ended up staying in the USHL. Yeah. He just was
which was a great move for him.
Yeah, over a point per game there. Tough playoffs, though. 2 games, no points, 15 penalty minutes. I guess a little frustration got the better of him there. Then he comes back to Winnipeg, 90 points. Like, I don't think it can be understated. And then when the pressure gets higher, and yeah, they had a wagon top to bottom, but still 12 points in 10 games, plus 13, and only 2 penalty minutes in the postseason this year. Like you're just getting a dynamic offensive player when you're talking about bringing in a guy like Matthew Savoie. And I think he's going to be on the board for Ottawa, which will make this interesting. But I also could see the Philadelphia Flyers taking him. Now, is he a Torts type player? Probably not.
No.
But I think he could do well learning from Cam Atkinson, a guy like that. And we know Russ Cohen's super high on him. Mock draft coming up. No spoilers, but don't be surprised if he's off the board in the top 5 there. This is going to be an interesting player where he lands in the draft. You saw the range, like 4 to 12. And yeah, it might not be as large as the ranges we saw later on, but in terms of value per pick, you're looking at a guy who, that's a pretty wide range itself, 4 to 12.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ross, maybe I'm completely wrong on this, but I kind of get vibes of like Marco Rossi with Savoie, right? Because remember Rossi,
there was less power.
Yeah, I don't mean so much as in their playing style, but their draft consensus. Like there was guys that were like, take Marco Rossi in the top 3.
Wheeler had him 3rd.
That's what I'm saying. Like there was guys that were like, no, he has so much talent, he needs to go early in the draft. But it wouldn't surprise them if in the real actual draft he ends up falling. And that's what happened. So I kind of get similar vibes from Savoie here and where he may end up.
Yeah, and they both lit up their respective leagues. I think Rossi had 123 points or something with the 67. Yeah. So interesting comparable there. Now, let me ask you this before we give our stars. If Matthew Savoie and Frank Nazar, 2 of the more undersized centers that could be wingers, are available, which way would you prefer the Senators lean?
That's tough because I love Nazar, but Savoie has so much upside. I think the Sens would pick Nazar, but I think I would rather them go for Savoie because there's just so much. There's so much potential. Like I would love that home run swing type of pick because if he can put it all together and get a little more size, man, I think Savoie could be real good.
Well, Pilsy, highest ceiling in the draft according to EP is Frank Nazar. So
no, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I lean Nazar, but I think that they're both similar players in the style that they play. So it'll be very interesting to see. Maybe if one's off the board, then the other team's like, okay, these were 2 guys that our type of team wants to draft. So now let's jump ahead and let's get the other one in the mix. And I think to a lesser extent, Slafkovsky and Gauthier, you could say the same, but we're pretty confident Slafkovsky's going 1 or 2 in this draft. So I'm really intrigued to see this between Nazar and Savoie, who falls and who gets snatched a little bit quicker in this draft. But Matthew Savoie comes in at number 7, right where the Senators are set to select. How many stars do you have for Matthew Savoie?
I got him at 4 stars, just because I think, like we mentioned, there's a lot of things that the Sens don't usually go for in a player like Savoie, so I think they might not select him. But I got no problems if that ends up being the pick, and I'll get behind that for sure.
I'm doing 3.5 because I had 4 for Frank Nazar, and I just told you I liked him a bit better than Savoie, so I'm going 3.5 stars for Matthew Savoie.